فليس لدى التحالف من سبيل الأنصار غير الانتحار فهم.
Tucked away in the mountains of southern Lebanon and the quiet towns of northern Israel lies one of the most dangerous front lines in the world. It is not always visible and it is rarely calm, but it is constantly on the verge of eruption. This is the theater of tension between Israel and Hezbollah, a relationship shaped by decades of conflict, ideology, foreign intervention, and deeply rooted mistrust. Hezbollah's origin traces back to the early 1980s in the aftermath of the Israeli invasion of Lebanon. At the time, Lebanon was in the grip of a brutal civil war, and the Israeli military had advanced deep into the country in an effort to push back the Palestinian Liberation Organization. In the vacuum of state authority, and with the strong ideological and logistical support of Iran's newly formed Islamic Republic, Hezbollah was born initially as a resistance movement against Israeli occupation in southern Lebanon. But Hezbollah quickly grew beyond that role. With funding, training, and weaponry provided by Iran's Revolutionary Guard, it developed into a sophisticated political and military organization. Over the decades, it has become deeply embedded in Lebanese society, running social programs, hospitals, and schools, while simultaneously building a powerful armed wing with thousands of fighters and an extensive rocket arsenal. Hezbollah's strength lies in this dual identity. It is both a major political actor in Lebanon and a non-state military force with regional ambitions. Its mission, however, has remained consistent: resistance against Israel and the broader Western-aligned presence in the region. From its perspective, Israel represents not just a national enemy, but a symbol of Western imperialism, propped up by the United States and a threat to Islamic sovereignty in the Middle East. For Israel, Hezbollah is not just a hostile neighbor, it is an existential threat. Since the end of the 2006 war between the two, which devastated parts of Lebanon and displaced hundreds of thousands, Israel has monitored Hezbollah's military buildup with increasing alarm. It has watched as the group, using Iranian funds and know-how, has amassed tens of thousands of short and medium-range rockets, many of which can now reach Tel Aviv and beyond. More concerning still is the development of precision-guided missile systems, technologies that could enable Hezbollah to target specific military and civilian infrastructure with high accuracy. The situation is further complicated by the regional dynamic. Hezbollah does not operate in isolation. It is part of what Iran calls the Axis of Resistance, a network of allied groups stretching from Yemen's Houthis in the south to Syria's Alawite regime and Iraq's Shia militias. The goal of this axis is to encircle Israel, contain American influence, and shift the regional balance of power away from Western-aligned states. Within this framework, Hezbollah is not merely reacting to Israeli actions. It is participating in a long-term strategic confrontation with Tehran as its anchor and patron. This brings us to the present. In October 2023, Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel from the south, triggering a fierce Israeli military response in Gaza. As the war intensified, Hezbollah began to act, not on a massive scale, but in calculated steps. It launched rocket attacks on northern Israel, targeted military outposts along the border, and made it clear that it was standing in solidarity with the Palestinian cause. To many observers, this was the signal that the northern front, long a dormant threat, was starting to ignite. Israel responded with a mix of restraint and force. Airstrikes hit Hezbollah observation posts, vehicles, and ammunition depots. Senior Hezbollah figures were reportedly killed. The Israeli government declared the north a combat zone and began evacuating residents from towns and villages near the Lebanese border. Tens of thousands of people were displaced, many of whom had lived under the shadow of war before. The Israeli military mobilized reserves, fortified northern positions, and prepared for the possibility of a full-scale two-front war. The fear now is that this limited confrontation could spiral into something far larger. Both sides have reasons to escalate. Hezbollah may see an opportunity to pressure Israel while it is heavily engaged in Gaza. Iran, facing international isolation, may encourage its allies to stretch Israel's military thin and provoke a wider regional confrontation. On the other hand, Israel may decide that the Hezbollah threat has grown too severe to ignore and seek to neutralize it preemptively, knowing full well that such a move could ignite war across Lebanon and beyond. Yet, neither side truly wants a full-scale war. Hezbollah is aware that a massive Israeli campaign could devastate Lebanon's already collapsing economy, destroy civilian infrastructure, and erode its political support at home. Israel knows that even its advanced missile defense systems would struggle to absorb a sustained barrage from Hezbollah's arsenal, and that a second war theater could strain its military and diplomatic capacity. This balance of terror, this mutual assured destruction, has kept the flames at bay. But it is a fragile balance, one that depends on perfect calculation, unbroken communication, and an absence of misjudgment. The margin for error is razor thin. Meanwhile, civilians on both sides wait. In northern Israel, residents sleep in bomb shelters or flee to the south. In southern Lebanon, families live under the constant threat of Israeli drones and artillery. Schools are closed. Businesses shuttered. Life hangs in suspension, caught between memory and fear. International efforts to mediate have so far made little headway. The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, has limited authority and effectiveness. Western diplomats continue to shuttle between capitals, urging de-escalation, but the structural issues at play, regional rivalries, ideological commitments, and unresolved historical grievances are far beyond the scope of temporary ceasefires. This is not just a border clash. It is a geopolitical fault line where multiple tensions converge: Israeli security concerns, Iranian expansionism, Lebanese instability, and Palestinian resistance. What happens here affects not just the local population, but the broader balance of power in the Middle East. As of now, the war remains undeclared but very real. The fighting may still be limited in scale, but the rhetoric is heating up, the casualties are mounting, and the risk of escalation is growing by the day. What happens next will depend not only on the decisions made in Jerusalem and Beirut, but also in Tehran, Washington, and even Moscow. The Israel-Hezbollah conflict is not merely a question of territory or retaliation. It is a confrontation between two visions of the Middle East, one anchored in statehood, the other in ideological resistance. Until those visions can be reconciled or contained, the region will remain one spark away from disaster. And for the millions who live in its shadow, that spark may come at any moment.